Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Smorgasboard podcast. I'm Parker, that's Josh, and faceless as always is Chris. And we're just gonna talk about some fun stuff today. Some fun stuff that each one of us kind of brought to the table. Starting off, I want to talk about the King Kong versus Godzilla movie that has been announced to come out later this year. Two big meaty monsters fighting each other, and I'm extraordinarily excited for it. Typically not super big on these kinds of movies, but you got the two Goliaths of the monster world getting ready to do battle. One man takes all, or one monster takes all, rather. So I'm super stoked for this movie. How's everybody else feeling about it?
Oh yeah. I was a big fan of the newer Godzilla movie and Skull Island. Haven't seen King of Monsters yet, but this trailer completely sold me on it. I'm definitely down for it.
Yeah, like I said before we fired this up, I have only seen the very first Godzilla movie, like Japanese, Godzilla movie, and nothing more than that. I don't. After watching this trailer a couple times, I might be interested in watching it for the sake of just knowing pop culture stuff. I probably will, but
Well,
um,
the production value is definitely gonna jump between the last Godzilla movie that
yeah.
you saw. Because the old
Hopefully,
Japanese one, so you told me that you watched the old Japanese one, but are we talking about like the dude in the big like lizard suit and it's like black
like
and white,
yeah, like
or
black and white Godzilla. Yeah.
oh gosh, how great would it be if I think they should have done this movie like that. I think it would have been a good homage to the old school way of filmmaking, and you just get two dudes in like practical effects suits, and you don't give them a script. You just literally tell them like, go out there, fight each other, and whoever wins gets like $100,000. And then you just have,
100% I would have watched it then.
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. You just dangle that carrot in between two starving actors in Hollywood, put them in goofy, suits, and they'll just fight each other to the death, and that would be awesome. So there's a lot about this trailer that I find really interesting. One of which, and there's some things that the internet, of course, in their vast wisdom, have pointed out. So traditionally, King Kong's not that big, I guess. I didn't know that because I kind of, maybe I'm ignorant on like the monsters universe, like things like Godzilla and King Kong, but I always just assumed that they were all generally the same size. And everybody was complaining on the internet that like, why is King Kong so big now? Like, and people were throwing up like comparison pictures showing that King Kong is really supposed to be like a tenth of like Godzilla's size or something like that. Like, it's really bizarre. I don't know, what are your guys' opinion on that?
I think that's just the people that the only King Kong movie they've seen was the Peter Jackson Kong, and they were
Mhm.
expecting that size Kong climbing on Empire State Building, whereas this Kong is much bigger than the building.
Right.
So
Yeah, like he's massive. And it makes sense because like you you want to constantly be wondering who's actually going to win, and if one is like this big and the other one's like this big,
yeah.
then like I'm all for a scrappy underdog story, but that's a little ridiculous. If King Kong, like, I don't, somebody told me they like, oh yeah, I wanted to see like King Kong swinging around off of like Godzilla's scales and stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. I probably just insulted somebody in our close friend group if they're listening to this, but I don't care. It's stupid. Like, I want them both the same size. I want a fair fight. I want a good, clean fight. No shots below the belt. You know, that's,
Yep. Once
Well,
that's
again,
what I
coming
want.
in completely like ignorant to the everything monster mayhem or whatever you want to call them. But is there any reason that King Kong can't be this size? Like, I've seen the same things. Seen and heard the same thing too. Like, why is Kong so big? But it's like, why can't he be big? Like,
Yeah.
is this even the same Kong? I don't know if there's a connection between these movies, but if it's not the
So
same Kong or
yeah.
anything, then why can't he be this big?
right.
So I'm pretty sure that like the connected movies here are the Godzilla movie from
I think
like
2014.
2014. That sounds right. Is the Godzilla movie from 2014, Kong Skull Island, and then the Godzilla King of Monsters that came out a few years ago, or last year, or 2019, I think. It was either 2018 or 2019. Can't remember when it came out, but I think those are kind of the connected movies here because a lot of characters are recurring from the King of Monsters movie, like the girl from Stranger Things. I can never remember her name.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, so she played a pretty major role in King of Monsters, and she was popping up in this trailer with I think the kid from Deadpool 2 that played
Oh,
the little like mean Australian kid. I can't remember his name
I
either.
can't remember it either.
I'm
Yeah.
dropping the ball here, but yeah. So I think all of those movies are like connected in a way because like a decent way of kind of building up for these two like pretty popular monsters to fight each other, having these movies kind of intertwined with one another because they really teased King Kong at the end of King of Monsters in the after credits. They were like rolling like newspaper like headlines or like media headlines about all of these monsters like cropping up like across the world, and then like one of them was like a silhouette shot of King Kong, so everybody immediately was like, oh yeah, they're gonna lock horns in the next movie. So all of these movies are connected, and yeah, I don't see like, I think it's one of those things where it's like, why do you care that King Kong is so big? Like, it's got to be a believable fight, so do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
another thing that I liked about this movie or the trailer specifically is that the internet is kind of like reflecting the way that the people in the movie in the trailer were acting, because like you got all these different perspectives of some people being like Kong bows to no one, and it's like Godzilla is unstoppable, and then the internet right now is just like everybody taking sides on who's gonna win between Godzilla and King Kong. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there are like side bets all across the world right now of like people being like, yeah, I'm putting $100 on King Kong beating Godzilla in the movie. Like, the internet is just so funny about how they're taking sides about fake monsters. It's one of those beautiful things where sometimes the internet can get together to do something really funny and not tragic. So the fact that like everybody's taking sides and people are making memes and videos about like how awesome King Kong is and how crappy Godzilla is and vice versa. And I think that's really funny. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are like fights breaking out if this gets released in movie theaters and people are actually able to go watch it. I think it would be really funny to just be like, on opening night of King Kong versus Godzilla, several fights broke out in the parking lot of just like a bunch of drunken dudes just yelling at each other over like which monster they like better.
There's going to be videos of people out front of movie theaters when this comes out
Oh yeah.
with in like ape suits and then those blow up T-Rex suits, duking
Oh
it
my
out. There's
gosh.
going to be those videos.
They're just gonna line up on each side of the parking lot. There's just gonna be an army of dudes in like gorilla suits and an army of guys in those T-Rex suits, and they're just gonna like collide and start fighting each other. That would be hilarious. I'm not condoning violence or anything, but I would watch that.
So I got a question
Oh
for you
gosh.
two. Do
Yeah.
you think we're going to actually get a winner? Or do you think they're going to do a little bit of a cop out and pull a Batman vs Superman and introduce an unknown villain in the third act that they have to
Oh
fight?
gosh. I hope not. I
Because I think
I
there's like an
mentioned
80% chance of that happening.
I mentioned earlier that you know if there if like Mecha Godzilla showed up, like I brought this up one other time when we talked about this. I think Chris brought it up before the podcast, but if Mecha Godzilla showed up, then they probably could pull like a cop out like Batman v Superman. I hope not, because the trailer even said like one will fall. So they're pretty much like calling their shot that yeah, one of these two like monsters is gonna eat it, and the franchise is gonna focus on the other one probably. But I wouldn't put it past anybody to be like, yeah, one might fall, but King Kong might get killed by like Mecha Godzilla sacrificing himself to save humanity or something. such nonsense. So I could definitely see a cop out. I hope there isn't one. If they're gonna bring in something like Mecha Godzilla or like Mecha King Ghidorah, which was like the monster from the main bad guy monster from the King of Monsters movie. If they wanted to bring in like a mecha dinosaur or dragon or whatever, like do that in the end credits scene and set up another movie. Like, don't fill this with too many monsters. Like
Yeah.
just give us what we want with the big lizard and the big ape fighting each other.
Yep.
I think if just looking at it from like a movie standpoint, since I know nothing about the whole franchise, and looking at the trailer, I'm going to put my money on Kong winning, just because as a theatric, he has something to fight for in that he's protecting that kid or whoever,
Oh
or
yeah.
he has a connection with that kid or whatever it is. Like he has something to quote unquote fight for, where it's Godzilla's just causing destruction for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say from like a storytelling point, it'll probably be like Kong who pulls through and beats Godzilla. Plus, that he's like the underdog in this because I mean Godzilla's a giant
You're
reptile
right.
that can shoot lasers. So
Yeah. Now to King Kong's credit, they did establish that he knows how to use tools.
This is
like,
a log King Kong now.
Because the last scene of the trailer is Godzilla like using whatever his laser beam is, blasting it at King Kong, and King Kong is somehow conducting it with like this axe that he just has suddenly. And just brings it down on top of Godzilla. So the fact that King Kong knows how to use like tools, at least like primitive tools, I think gives him a slight advantage over Godzilla, despite the fact that Godzilla is a literally like powered off of like nuclear energy and can shoot laser beams. Opposable thumbs and the ability to swing a hammer can go a long way. So I think I'm gonna put my money on King Kong as well.
See, I'm going the opposite way. I think Godzilla, if they're going to declare a winner, when they fight, if there's going to be a clear-cut winner, I think it's going to be Godzilla. And the reason is, other than I favor Godzilla generally, but the other reason is he's got 2 movies under his belt going into this one. Kong has 1. And I think they might see that as more of a money-making opportunity. Okay, well, we've made a lot of money off Godzilla. Let's not kill him off or have him lose. So I think they're thinking from the money perspective on that one.
So because Godzilla has generated more revenue for the studio than King Kong has, that immediately gives him an advantage.
100%,
Yeah.
yes.
and like you said, it says one will fall. I guess that doesn't technically mean that one will die.
Right.
It could be like Kong uppercuts Godzilla for like a final move, and then he sinks back into the ocean, and then we don't see him again, or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to leave that plausible deniability to bring up another movie. So
yeah,
who knows where it can go.
I think it would be cool if King Kong does kill Godzilla, and then that's how they introduce like a Mecha Godzilla.
As he gets done killing Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla pops up. It's just like,
What if that's the third act to the movie?
I was gonna say that like King Kong kills Godzilla, and then King Kong's just like, yeah, I'm the big monkey in charge now, and like probably the U.S. government swoops in, takes Godzilla's body, and then they're just like, let's just fill it full of technology.
They're going to take it to Japan.
A super weapon. And then the super weapon turns, or King Kong then decides he doesn't need humans either. Because that's the whole weird thing for me. Like, with these giant monsters, giving them reasons for why they do the things that they do. Like, this is going to be a bit of a spoiler for King of All Monsters or whatever. But, like, Godzilla's whole, like, driving motivation is that he basically just tries to, like, bring balance, like, natural balance to the earth. So when, like, humanity oversteps its bounds or whatever and, like, starts destroying the environment, Godzilla shows up, destroys a few cities, and then suddenly foliage is allowed to grow where those cities are again. And that was, like, the whole point. And he, like, went after King Ghidorah because he was actually, like, an alien.
Jeez.
So
So
Godzilla's an
he was
eco warrior.
basically, yeah, basically Godzilla's like this eco warrior that like defends
Trained
the
by
Earth
Captain Planet.
from like the threat of like space parasites in the form of a three-headed dragon or the most deadliest game mankind. So that was like Godzilla's whole thing. So now it's like in this movie, it's like, well, why is Godzilla gone bad now? Apparently, why is he destroying everything? And it's like, I think you answered that with your first movie. Maybe he's just sick of humans and he's just like, I'm just gonna wipe the board. But for whatever reason, King Kong likes uh somebody, a small child that like made a connection with him, and now he's like, well, I guess I have to save all of the humans now by fighting the lizard. I don't know. It's very silly, but I'll probably watch it still anyway.
The trailer sold me. I was 100%
Oh
in
yeah.
when Kong just punched Godzilla straight in the chin. That was when I was like, my movie ticket's sold right there.
Yeah.
I want to see this. I want to see this.
Yeah. Yeah, because King of the Monsters did a good job of having a lot of like because they had several of the like Godzilla universe monsters in it. So there was like always somebody for Godzilla to fight. So there was like this constant like fight feel, which was funny because critics panned it for saying that there was too much monster fighting. And it's like if your Godzilla movie isn't 90% monster fighting, then I don't know what you're doing. Like, why even have a movie then?
That's like saying too many cars
Yeah.
in Fast and the Furious to me. It's like
Yeah,
that's what
it's
you're
like
going there for. You
yeah, it's like them saying Godzilla 2000 is a better movie than Godzilla King of the Monsters. It's like, yeah, you only had one Godzilla and Matthew Broderick was in it. It's like, why have a movie? Like, what? I don't even know what the point of that movie was. They probably just needed to like keep the licensing or something. We got to make a Godzilla movie. See if Broderick's available. Very, very goofy. But yeah, if there's just like constant monster fighting in this movie, which there needs to be, if they like have a best of 3 series throughout this whole
Hey,
movie, I'm down for it
yeah,
100%.
I love it.
Yep. So to wrap this up with a very dumb, slightly related story, I was driving the other day listening to some music and the song Leroy Brown came on. Have you guys heard of that? Like
Yeah.
song goes like bad, bad Leroy Brown, baddest fan in the whole town. And there's a part in it that said like badder than old King Kong. So I had it in my mind that if King Kong wins this, then technically in this universe, Leroy Brown is stronger than King Kong, meaning that he is now the king of all monsters. So like 70s tough guy should be ruling the monsterverse and putting everybody in their place. Dumb thought, I know. Probably cut this part out. That's fine. All right. I think that's all we've got for King Kong. So moving on, uh, in line with apes controlling the world, uh, Neuralink, which is a company owned by our good buddy Elon Musk, is teaching monkeys to play video games. And I'm gonna just let that set for a minute and let you guys talk about that.
Uh, where do we begin with this one? So we there was an article just released that said that Neuralink, like Parker had said, has successfully tested on a monkey who can play video games with his mind. That's scary right there. Sounds like the beginning of Planet of the Apes or something. Just write that right there. But for those that don't know, Neuralink is a chip, which is a little bit bigger than a quarter, which they will implant into your skull with surgery by a robot, and it'll connect a bunch of tiny little wires to different parts of your brain with electrodes, and it will allow you to interface with technology, is what it is. And the fundamental thing behind it is Elon Musk says that your ability to absorb information is not fast enough. So getting information off of YouTube, off the internet, through your smartphone, it's a great way to get information, but it's just too small of a bandwidth. So this is pretty much skipping absorbing information through your ears or mind, or eyes, I mean, and just going straight to your brain. So it's a chip that's just going to allow you to interface with technology, which opens up a vast world of problems, which we can discuss here. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of in both boats of that. It's scary technology, but it's also kind of exciting technology, in my opinion, because it opens up the realm for a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, there's going to be some pretty bad stuff that could happen with it, but then there could also be some really good stuff that can happen with it. Like in that article where Musk was talking about this, he was talking about the main objective of Neuralink was to be used for paraplegics to be able to access stuff that they wouldn't normally be able to do. Like somebody somebody could play video games that they wouldn't normally be able to, or access the internet, in ways that they couldn't before, or just be able to do stuff that they couldn't do in ways that they couldn't do before. So there are some really good things that this could help if it can be done in a safe and humane way, in a non-invasive, but I mean it's already an invasive surgery, but like non-invasive on a privacy scale. I think it could really help in a lot of ways.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of potential to do good, 100%. And I think it will start out that way. I think if he succeeds on it, you will see handicapped people overcoming their disabilities and stuff, 100%. But I think it just takes a moment in history, like, for example, cell phones pre 9/11, very useful, almost no downside. After 9/11, they've become a surveillance tool and a way to track you. And I think it just takes a moment like that for this technology to cross that line, and it will be used to provide surveillance on you, or track you, or even worse, control you, because it opens that up. But I do agree, yeah, there's a lot of upside to it, and I think you'll see that before you see the negative consequences.
I guess the devil's advocate in that would be, I mean, we're already being tracked and everything with our cell phones anyway, so how much more could they track you with something like this? And is it even possible to be controlled by something like this? Like it has like outward control on something like like being able to use your cell phone without your hand, or like your TV or whatever. But is there a way? And I'm sure there's a ton of crafty people out there who are just as intelligent as the people working at Neuralink to develop this, that could reverse engineer it and find some way. But is it possible? It's just stuff we don't know quite yet.
What was it, Parker? We were discussing a little bit ago about in the article, is it either the article or the presentation they did about 6 months ago? They one of them was saying that Elon believes that in the future with this, you will be able to pretty much upload your memories to a server to store them as a backup. And then he thinks in the future, and in the very far future, that you'll be able to download them into another human body or a robot.
Yeah, so he was definitely getting into like the realm of sci-fi, and like kind of letting his mind wander, because Elon Musk, if you can say anything about Elon Musk, the guy has quite an imagination. Like when he gets going on a topic, who knows what's gonna like pour out of his mouth.
Yeah.
But like the idea of, I mean, if there are millions of sci-fi examples that you can kind of go to as an example of this, but this idea of kind of having like a save state of somebody's consciousness and then either uploading that into like another body via the Neuralink or into a machine or something like that, like that is so, it's hard to even comprehend somebody thinking about that rationally, like thinking that like within their lifetime that could be something that could like actually happen. And Elon Musk was like, I don't know, it's interesting to me because he was kind of a big proponent for, taking your time with like artificial intelligence, because he was very much like in the camp of AI as something to be like very cautious about moving forward. And then like fast forward a few years and he's talking about like uploading people's brains and like their identity and their very being like to a cloud somewhere to be like, if you've ever seen the show Altered Carbon, this is that like 100%. So I
Yeah.
don't know if Elon was just like, watching Netflix before he did this interview and was just like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. And maybe we can work that into Neuralink. Like it's so bizarre, like using this kind of technology, because there's technology that already exists that kind of like links up to your neural network and uses your nervous system and the synapses of your brain to like control things, and kind of what Elon wants to use it for, I guess, for the paraplegics. Like there are, amputees and people who have these like prosthetic limbs that they can like control to some degree through a very similar like technology, but nothing quite. Well, some of it I think is a little bit similar in terms, but not nearly like on the scale I think of what Elon Musk wants to do, because he's made it very clear that like, this is like you wouldn't even notice if somebody had one. And I think that's more scary than anything, because kind of what Josh mentioned about surveillance, it's like, yeah, cell phones and all that stuff do that now. But like imagine walking into a room with somebody and just knowing that they can record the conversation just with like something that's been planted in their head. If that's where the technology went. I think to some degree we're doing some speculations too, but it's like when you drop something like this, like you're a company that focuses on like exploring and developing products for the brain, and you say like, oh, we just plugged one of these devices into a monkey so that he could play video games without his hands. Like if that's not the time to start like wildly speculating about the potential like uses for this kind of technology, I don't know when the right time is.
Yeah. And I do think we need to make it clear that this is not technology that is going to be ready tomorrow. We
Oh
are a
gosh, no.
ways out from this, but this is the groundwork for this. This
Yeah.
is going to have the capabilities to do everything we just talked about. Not right when it first launches or anything, but this technology is meant to be able to have those capabilities. So,
Yeah, I mean, Elon had a tweet that even said like short term, like brain and like spinal injuries could be like a potential application for the Neuralink technology. Long term, human and AI like synthesis, essentially. Like that's crazy to think
yeah.
that his long term goal is like to basically make everyone cyborgs.
Right.
I wonder, whenever Elon does these interviews on stuff like Neuralink and his other plethora of businesses that he's adventuring and exploring, I wonder how it is his like the scientists and the people in charge of like Neuralink and stuff are
Yeah.
sitting behind and they're like, we don't know if that's even a possibility at this point. And he's over here like, I just got done watching Altered Carbon. We're going to make
Yeah.
those little discs and pop them into the back of our necks. Like, I just
Yeah.
wonder how the people behind the scenes, like actually doing the research and testing and stuff, are just like, Elon, we don't even know what a personality is.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't even know what the brain fully does yet, and you're over here wanting to turn us into robots.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if either of you guys have seen the show Silicon Valley on HBO, but there's a scene in that movie where like the Elon Musk kind of like esque character is talking to his engineers about like, we need a new like cutting edge product and we need it now. And they basically come up with Neuralink, which is kind of
Oh.
funny. Like they're talking about like a device that you like plug into your ear that has like some kind of like sensor that connects to like your brain, and you can use it to control like your smartphone and your smart devices. And the guy's like, that's amazing, when can we start development on this? And the head guy's like, I think it'll be done like in our lifetime, our grandchildren will probably use this technology. And the guy just gets absolutely furious about it because he's like, no, we need this now. So that's like Elon Musk to me. He just comes out and says these crazy, ridiculous things to get headlines and to get people's attention. And like his people behind the scenes are just like, what are you doing? Like, like, don't go out there and start telling people that we're gonna like be planning AIs in their head with Neuralink in like the not too distant future. Like, you were setting us up to fail or worse, you know? Like, don't they probably wish they could just like put a muzzle on him, you know? Sometimes it's like when we have something big to announce, then let him off the leash. But until then, just keep him off Twitter.
Yes. Yeah.
So if this technology were to drop in say 10 years and it was fully functional and safe to use under however you want to say safe to use, would you use it, barring that it was available to you, not like you didn't have to pay for it, because it's probably going to be like when it does come out or whenever it is established, it'll probably be astronomically high to be able to get one of these things, but you were able to get it, would you?
My answer is gonna be really long, so I'm gonna let Josh go first.
I think my answer is going to be a little bit longer than what you're expecting, but I'm afraid. Okay, to answer your question directly, no, I would not. But I am afraid of a world that this becomes so commonplace, like a cell phone, and that you cannot perform your job up to the standard of someone who has one, that you would be required to have one to keep up. And what I mean by that is with this has the potential to have you connected to the internet, and therefore you have the entire internet's information at your thoughts. And someone with that would be able to do their job much better than you could without it. I'm afraid of that world. But to answer your question, no, I would not right off the bat, no. But I would be afraid of a world where I would have to get one to keep up.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat as Josh. My answer is a big no, and you know, I work in the software development field, so knowing what I know from experience of like working on projects that require like software development, and just like from my use with commercial objects like a cell phone or my computer or whatever, I would never want something like this plugged into my brain ever. Because when you think about like the number of patches that get rolled out for software and like your commercial products, like how many times your like iPhone gets updated within a year, how many times you log onto your computer and Windows tells you you need to run like a mandatory update or whatever. And then when you even get to Josh's point about somebody having the internet at their thoughts, you know, what happens when the like negative side of the technology catches up with everything, and suddenly you have to worry about getting a computer virus in your brain. Like, now I have to pay for Norton security on my computer and my brain. Like, or you can get McAfee and just die. Like, it's an absolute like horror show. Like, this is like the techno apocalypse to me. Like, you know, all of the futuristic stuff that we see in like movies and video games, it's cool, but you know, I think a lot of people will kind of glorify the the positive sides of it to the point where you don't think so much about how potentially dangerous it really could be. Like, the idea of widening like the brain to have like be able to process more data, that seems horrifying to me, you know, because you know, think about how your cell phone gets hot when you like have too many like Chrome tabs on it and you're running too many apps. You know, like Samsung batteries were exploding a few years ago, and Elon Musk is talking about putting like direct connection to the World Wide Web in your brain. Like, I feel like if the time limit is 10 years, absolutely not. No way you could ever convince me, even if it became mandatory. I'll find some way not to do it.
Yep.
This is technology to me that's like I can't even put a timeline on it, because the amount of research that you have to do, not only from an engineering standpoint, but from like a medical standpoint, like how this is actually going to affect your body. Because, you know, as we mentioned earlier, the brain is still like one of the great mysteries of the human body. Like, I don't think there's a person alive that could say that they know everything that there is to possibly know about how the brain works and how it functions and why certain things work the way that they do. Like when you start looking at, when people start like I was watching this show called 911, which is about like first responders, and one of the things was this lady was like having a stroke, and suddenly she started talking with a British accent, and it's like just something in the brain like ticked funny, and now suddenly she's like a completely different person. It's the fact that the brain is still such a mystery, and we're wanting to stick things in it to try and make it easier to use our cell phones, like helping the disabled and the needy, like that is very admirable. But when you start talking about this on a commercial level, where it's like I can sit here at my computer, not touch anything, and have like stuff going on every monitor and my phone, and not like move a muscle on my body, like that is so ridiculously out there in left field that like I almost don't even want to give it a second thought.
Yep. Jeez.
When I said 10 years, I know it's not really going to change your answer much, but I was just saying 10 years, so it would be within our lifetime.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
not that it would be in 10 years, but just so that it would give us a relative scope of when.
Yeah.
They,
But like even to give like just further, even if it like
in
I
our
don't care what
lifetime.
if it's even in our lifetime and it's proven that it's like 100% safe and there are no like downsides to it, I would still never do it.
Yeah.
I just can't shake it, because like you can talk about hypotheticals all you want, but I'm just I just can't see a universe where I would ever like willingly put a commercial object into my body that was not needed. you know like if you need a pacemaker, get a pacemaker, right? But if you don't need a Neuralink to live a happy, healthy life, I'm sorry, use your thumbs to text for the rest of your life. Like just
Yep.
just do that.
It's like there's people who get the little microchips in like their wrist so they can like open their doors.
Oh, yep.
You've seen those or not? Yeah, but
Yeah, like
there's like a key card that they put under their skin so they can they
I
can
mean,
access their house.
I got a key fob today to get me into the like gym on my apartment complex. I would never have something like that injected into my wrist just because it's like, oh, I can't find my key fob. I would rather have the inconvenience of like just tearing my apartment up trying to find my keys than just being like, yeah, just keep jamming stuff in there. Let's see how many fobs we can get into my forearm before we have to just cut it off because it's infected. And my body's rejecting it. Like, I don't know. The more we talk about this, the more I'm just like, confirming for myself that I would never want anything like this whatsoever.
And the scary thing about what we were just talking here is our thoughts on it about absolutely not, we're not getting this. If it becomes commonplace like cell phones and stuff, we're going to sound like our grandparents. I don't know
Right.
about your grandparents, but my grandpa and stuff's like, I don't need a cell phone. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't need a computer, the internet. Psh, I got my TV. That's good enough. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
that's the way it is going to be to our grandkids if this takes off. They're going to be like, what, you don't have a Neuralink? Dad, like, Grandpa, like, what are you talking about? Why are you still carrying that phone around? Like,
Yeah, it's really scary to think about that. That's that could be the future that we find ourselves in. But you know what? Like I have a cell phone and I wish I didn't. So my
yeah.
my grandparents were on the right page as far as I'm concerned. So maybe my offspring will feel the same way and they won't get a neural link and I can die knowing that future generations of my lineage won't, be controlled by Elon Musk.
So at this point I don't know what side of the bridge I'm on because you both brought up very good points. If
Yeah.
it came out in our lifetime, even when we're like 70, at that point I'll just be like, sure, heck, why not? I'm 70 years old, might as well. But if it came out in our lifetime and it was 100% safe and there were no drawbacks, no like drawbacks to like its base thing, not what other people could do to it. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there is the fear of software updates. Like, could it blue screen or just like crash?
Exactly.
What would happen in that instance?
Yep.
What I mean, there are like, if it was no more hindrance than what a cell phone would be, but then there were also more advantages of what than having just like a cell phone and having it in you, then sure, why not? Like, I'm I don't know. I'm also one of the people who was like, when Elon was like, we're going to send people to Mars. I was like, I will buy a ticket. I don't care. Like, as long as I'm on. See, the thing is, I would do it, but I'd be like, I'd wait for like a couple thousand of these Neuralinks to roll out on people, and then after a year, I'd probably try it. It's like, I want to be on the 5th or 6th ship to Mars, not the first.
Right.
But like, I don't know. It's exciting, and maybe I'm glorifying the like you said, the better parts of it. But it, like Josh said, there's probably going to be a time when it's going to be a hindrance to not have one, because the people are going to be able to outdo you with one. I mean, that's going into like automation stuff. It's like people losing their jobs to robots. You essentially be losing your job to a cyborg at that point,
Yep.
because you can't process stuff as fast as they can. So, I think in some way we're gonna, if you don't get a Neuralink, there's going to be a big thing of how humans keep up with the quote unquote cyborgs, and that's another scary thing to get into.
Right.
Because I mean, even like Andrew Yang, who was a Democratic candidate, he said during his campaign, he said that we had the last thing we had in our world was industrialization, to where everything moved over to an industry aspect, and now we're in the age of automation, or you know everything being taken over by robots and AI. Like, truckers are probably going to be the first people to lose their job to automated stuff, because trucks are just, we're going to have self-driving semis in the next like 10 years, if that. So to think that this isn't too far down the line after that, so it's like automation and then cyborgization.
Yeah.
Like, I if it was 100% safe to get it, like if there have been extensive studies on it, then sure, why not? I would get it. But if it's still up in the air, if it's like easily accessible by outside entities, of not even like government entities, because the government's always going to find a way to get into your stuff. I don't care who you are, what you think of the government, they're always going to find a way to get into your stuff, and that's just something we live with post 9/11. That's never going to go away.
Right.
But if an outside entity, like some guy sitting in his basement on his computer, just running through people's firewalls on their Neuralink, just getting into like that kind of stuff, like like getting DDoSed from some guy in his basement, just doing it for KWs, like.
Yeah. Getting zip bombed.
Imagine the ransomware. He's gonna lock you out of your Neuralink unless you pay him $500.
Oh my god! you can no longer use your left eye.
Yeah.
Until you give me $500. Just get spam mail after spam mail on your Neuralink.
Just don't take out a loan on one of these things. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you repossess this thing, it's going to be gonna get hairy.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's when we start digging into the dystopian aspect of the advancement of technology. Suddenly, it's not so cool to have a Neuralink. It's cool for the 5 months that you can keep up on payments, but after that,
Well,
not
isn't
so
it
much.
in an altered carbon that they would like get loans on like their new bodies and stuff?
Yeah.
And they had like repossession agents on those.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you couldn't afford your new body, they would send somebody to basically pluck your brain out and repossess the body and sell it to somebody else. So that would
we get into like an altered carbon state of things, and Neuralink like enhancing the rest of your body of
Yeah.
strength or speed or something like that. That'd be
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to see the potential future you could be hurling yourself into, go watch Altered Carbon on Netflix. But I
it's a
don't.
good show nonetheless. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a good show. Watch it regardless. But yeah, a lot of the more sci-fi things that Elon talked about did remind me of that to a great deal, especially the whole like save state of the human mind and putting it into another body. Like once you start getting in that conversation, it's just like, all right, you're a little out there for me. I think the big question that we're ignoring here is what video game did that monkey play?
Ooh.
hopefully something good.
Yeah, I hope he didn't play anything trash. Like I hope they gave him something fun to play. Like if they just had him play like asteroids for like 5 hours a day, that would get kind of boring. Maybe they let him play like I
It's
don't
probably
know.
Donkey Kong Country is probably what he was playing.
Oh. Okay, so just because he's a primate, he's supposed to enjoy. Maybe he, you know,
Maybe he's got some taste.
Maybe he wanted to play
wants...
Frogger.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I feel like you shouldn't put the monkey in a box and say that like the only game he would play is Donkey Kong Country, just because he's like, hey, I'm one of those. Like, I don't play like, I don't play a video game and see human. I'm like, hey, I'm one of those. This will be a fun game.
I don't think he got the option of which game to play. So
That's
I see them being
the
funny.
That's the real shame here is that they didn't even let the monkey pick what game he wanted to play. They probably sat him down and they were like, here's Tetris. It's like Tetris is fun, but Tetris is fun for like 2 hours at
Right.
max. And that's me, an avid Tetris player, saying that. Like normal people would probably like phase out after 20 minutes. But that poor monkey. I love how the Elon said that the monkey is not an unhappy monkey with the like.
Well, he's obviously
after-
winning at the games then. That's
yeah,
what it
I would
is.
hope so. I mean, yeah, like it would be a real bummer if like one of the scientists is sitting in there with the monkey and just like constantly one-upping his score. Like if the monkey sets a new high score, the scientist just like takes the controller and like bumps it up like by 1 point. Like that poor monkey, man. Like if Pete is ever gonna do something, they should go and save that monkey. Let him play the video games he wants to. If he wants to use his hands, let him use his hands, Elon Musk. Oh gosh. All right. Talking about big silly apes doing things for our enjoyment. This last weekend was the Royal Rumble. If you're a wrestling fan out there, if not, strap in. You might learn something. You might enjoy it. So the Royal Rumble, one of the biggest pay-per-views in professional wrestling history, and a personal favorite of mine. If you're gonna stick with this podcast, then you're gonna have to accept the fact that every once in a while I'm gonna want to talk wrestling. So I hope that's cool with everybody. But this pay-per-view was pretty good. Josh, you're actually just dipping your feet into the world of
Yes.
professional wrestling. So tell me what you thought about the Royal Rumble, man. What you?
I absolutely loved it. It had some low points for me, but
Yeah.
I think this was a very good and fun introduction to the Royal Rumble. The girls' matches were good. I liked it. I really liked the men's matches, but what took the cake for me was the title fight between Roman Reigns and is it Kevin Owens? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Kevin Owens. That was the cream of the crop for me right there.
Yeah, so for it's funny that you say that because that was one of Macho Man Randy Savage's like catchphrases.
Oh, that's right.
He would call himself the cream of the crop.
I think that was a little subliminal there. I didn't realize
Cream
that one.
always rises to the top, Hulk Hogan. Like I love wrestling so much. But yeah, the Kevin Owens Roman Reigns match was absolutely hilarious. It's a last man standing match. So for those who don't know, a last man standing match basically means you have to beat your opponent up to the point where they cannot answer a 10 count. So they cannot like get to their feet within 10 seconds. And typically the rules are that there are no rules and you can kind of do whatever you want. And there were some pretty interesting highlights to this match. One being that it would be great if they were actually allowed to have a crowd. But since, due to COVID, the WWE has opted to do a virtual crowd, which basically they've set up all of these like TV monitors around the arena, and you can sign up to like kind of like a lottery. And if you get picked, you get to pop your face gets to pop up, and you get to watch the show live. And your virtual image is on one of these screens out in the audience. So the fighting spewed out into like the virtual audience area, and they went up to like the very top like rung of like the audience that they could get to, and Roman Reigns like chucked Kevin Owens probably a good like 15 feet off of like these off of like where the monitors were, down into a table that was just full of a bunch of stuff. So he took a pretty nasty bump, got up pretty quick, so he seemed like he was all right, and he kind of stumbled into the backstage area, and there was a lot of like dead time where he was kind of like fumbling back there. And I was sitting there kind of watching, like something's gotta give at some point, because he's just like stumbling around, like tipping boxes over, because he's trying to like get his footing. And then just randomly out of nowhere, Roman Reigns runs Kevin Owens over with a golf cart.
Shatters the
So
windshield and everything.
shatters the windshield. So Roman Reigns comes speeding by. The only thing that was missing was like a little honking noise from the golf cart as it hit Kevin Owens. Like he just plowed through the guy with this golf cart, and it's so ridiculous. This is why moments like this are why I love professional wrestling, because yes, professional wrestling is fake, but how do you fake hitting a man with a go-kart? Like, yeah, they're not really fighting. They're not like, full on decking each other with punches. Like, it's not MMA, but come on. The dude got hit by a golf cart. Like, to anybody out there who's like, oh yeah, wrestling's fake, they don't actually hurt each other, I dare you to get run over by a golf cart in the similar fashion that Kevin Owens did, and you can see how you feel about professional wrestling after that. But it was absolutely hilarious. Kevin Owens shook it off and repaid Roman Reigns by hitting him with several heavy objects, and then using a forklift. Now, I thought he was going to use the forklift to like basically squash Roman Reigns.
I did too.
So he hops on a forklift of all things, and like he starts lifting the forklift, and I thought he was going to like drive the forklift over and just like pin Roman Reigns down with it so that he couldn't get up. But that would make too much sense. What he did instead was lifted it to its highest point, climbed up on top of it, and then jumped off of it probably another like 10 or 15 feet, and like drove Roman Reigns through a bunch of tables. And the crowd rejoiced. Everybody loved it. Everybody that I've talked to is like, that was hilarious. And then their fighting continues to spill out, and Roman Reigns, being the bad guy in this match, tries to cheat, which I don't know if you can technically cheat in a no disqualification match, but you can definitely play dirty. And he pulled out handcuffs, and he was going to handcuff like Kevin Owens to the ground or something. I don't know. But Kevin Owens like turned the tables on him and handcuffed him to like a lighting rig so that he couldn't stand up. And right when Roman Reigns was about to lose the match, he grabs the poor referee by his belt and just beans his head off of the lighting rig, knocks him out cold, because in professional wrestling, referees are made of glass. like a stiff breeze can take a referee out of a match permanently, like can end a referee's career. So naturally this guy's done for. He probably took the nastiest bump that a referee's taken in the past 10 years, and he's out of the match. And Roman Reigns has a flunky named Paul Heyman who comes over, and he's got a key for the handcuffs, and he's trying to get the handcuffs unhooked, but they have a little bit of trouble actually unhooking the handcuffs. So a new referee comes out, and he starts making the count because Roman Reigns is on his feet, and he gets to like 7 when he realizes, uh-oh, I'm counting too fast, because if I keep counting, he's going to lose the match. And clearly that was not what was supposed to happen. So just randomly, the referee has to stop counting. And it's like so obvious, and it slows the match down so much, because up to this point, a man got hit by a golf cart. Several tables have been destroyed. Property damage is out the wazoo. All this crazy stuff has happened. And now we have to take like a 5-minute break so that they can try and get like handcuffs off of the guy. And I'm just sitting here wondering, why wasn't somebody like on standby with a pair of bolt cutters?
Why didn't the handcuffs have that safety release? You know,
Yeah,
why'd they actually
why
use
did they
legit handcuffs with a key? You know.
yeah, like Vince McMahon's in the back and he's just like, it has to be authentic. The crowd will know. Like, Vince, there's no crowd though. They're all virtual. Like, they'll know. Like, all right, fine, we'll use real handcuffs. So I feel like that should have just been the go-to to begin with. Like, Paul Heyman should have just ran up with bolt cutters because you're just blink done. And like, don't tell me the WWE doesn't have enough money to pay for like handcuffs and like a one-use handcuff to be thrown away because you like cut them in half. Sell them on eBay, make your money back, whatever. Put them in the WWE shop and like limited time only. The actual handcuffs used in the Roman Reigns Kevin Owens fight. Like, you know, thousands of things to do, but instead they opted to let a man in his like 50s try and like struggle to unhook handcuffs off of the Universal Champion. And so finally they got the handcuffs unhooked. Roman Reigns just like put Kevin Owens in a submission and knocked him out, and that was the end of the match. So overall, I was very happy with that match. It did kind of slow down though near the end, and you know, your finish is something that you should never like. You shouldn't slow down going into your finish. You know, you should finish strong no matter what the circumstances are. And it was just like so close to the end that handcuff thing really screwed him up. So, Josh,
Also,
your opinions? Yeah, go ahead.
I loved the fight, but the other thing I want to talk about was how crazy was that Randy Orton RKO at the end of the Rumble?
Oh my God, yeah. So to fill in everybody, the Royal Rumble match is a 30-man fight where 2 men start the match. And then the remaining 28 men join the match randomly at like a 2-minute interval. And the first 2 guys that started are like wrestling veterans, Randy Orton and Edge. And Edge has been out of commission for like the past 8 years with a neck injury. And he's been out of commission for like the past 7 months with like a separated shoulder. So, and they've got a huge history with each other. So the fact that these 2 guys started the match is like incredible, and there's like a real bitter rivalry going on between them. So the match starts off with these 2 just like absolutely beating the heck out of each other, and then Randy kind of fakes an injury to sit out like the entire Rumble. Rumbles usually last anywhere between an hour and an hour and a half, because with 30 guys like coming and going from the ring, you know, it's going to take a long time. And I think they've actually changed the rules a little bit for like the time limits and stuff, like how long it takes for like more dudes to come out. And at one point they had like a Royal Rumble that had like 40 competitors. Like they've limited it to like 30 only. Like every year it seemed like it changed a little bit. So, you know, for like a whole hour, Randy Orton is sitting out the match pretending he has an injury. And then we get down to the last 2 guys, you know, so Edge, who started the Royal Rumble at number 1, and even like that's a pretty big deal, because here's a guy who hasn't been like consistently wrestling for the past 9 years, and he went for a full like hour almost. You know,
I thought
like
I watched a YouTube video earlier today that said his last match was back in June.
Yeah.
So he hadn't even been in a match since June then before this.
No, yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean,
Wow.
we're talking about a guy who's like his stamina is clearly not on the same level as guys that have been like consistently like in matches and working for like the past year, you know. So but what's amazing is that he kept up. Like, you know, it kind of goes to his credit of his talent that he was able to like keep up with all of these guys who have been like consistently working for the past 7 months. And he's been not only out for 7 months, but he was completely out of the wrestling business for like 8 years with a neck injury. So, you know, you've got him entering in at number 1, lasting about an hour, and then he throws the last guy out. You think it's all over, and suddenly Randy Orton pops back up because he was technically never eliminated, and that's one of the big like, you know, bad guy tactics. You know, you find a way to sit out of the fight, but you don't get eliminated so that you can pop back in whenever you feel like it, and you can cheat to win. So basically that's what Randy did. Edge thought he had it all won, turns around, gets hit with Randy Orton's finisher, the RKO. Now I was beside myself when this happened, because I was just like, I was like, no, it can't end like this. Like Edge has such a good story. He comes back from injury. He he's passionate about, the business and wanting to like take back the 8 years that were taken from him. Like I was I didn't think he would win because he went in at number one, because like only one or two other people have ever won from like the number one position. So the idea of him winning from number one, like astronomically low. And I had this sliver of hope, and I was like, wow, he's actually gonna do it. And then Randy Orton comes in and just like crushes the dreams of everyone. And for a split moment there, I was like, wow, this is it. This is how it ends. And then in a turn of events, as Randy starts to throw Edge out of the ring, Edge reverses it, chucks Randy out instead, and becomes like the second or third person to ever enter at number one and win the Royal Rumble. Now, you're probably wondering, why is the Royal Rumble important? The Royal Rumble is important because it gets you a guaranteed spot in the main event at WrestleMania, which is like the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. Like there's no event bigger in the world of professional wrestling than WrestleMania. And the amount of like respect and prestige that goes in it for these guys is like is unfathomable. Like for you to win the Rumble and move on to WrestleMania, it's a pretty big deal in the wrestling community. So for a guy like Edge to come back from injury and do it is like it's a real feel good moment for fans. Fans weren't Everybody had their favorites and the people that they wanted to win, but I don't you would be hard pressed to find somebody who's like, "Oh, I didn't like it that Edge won," you know.
So let me ask someone who doesn't know here. With him going into WrestleMania, what title is he going to get a shot at, or what position in it?
He used to choose, I believe, whether he wants to go after Drew McIntyre's title or Roman Reigns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's what if we watched Raw, last night, and that's why he was saying to Drew McIntyre, he's like, I could be coming for your belt. Like, you don't need to be friends with me. Like, I could be facing you in Mania, and so he gets to choose. I mean, ultimately, he doesn't get to choose.
Right.
It'll be whoever they line up for him, but.
Okay.
Yeah. The world of professional wrestling, it's like if you took like an action movie and just made it like a weekly episodic thing. Professional wrestling falls into that category because the people that go out and perform for you, like Edge is a character.
Yeah.
That's played by the professional wrestler Adam Copeland. Like you have to look at it in that mindset because we can go on and on about the history of professional wrestling and how the business was perceived as being real and authentic, and how in like the 90s and early 2000s Vince McMahon changed the word wrestler to superstar and changed from like wrestling to sports entertainment. Like it's a show like any other TV show that you would watch. If you like watching like melodramas or action adventure shows or comedy shows, like professional wrestling is that like all encompassed into one. Professional wrestling has its drama, it has its comedy, it has its like feel good moments and like its sad moments. Like it just covers the
moments.
Yeah, oh, it has plenty cringe moments, trust me. Like it covers the full spectrum of emotions, and I would argue that you can find just about anyone could probably find something or someone that they like about professional wrestling. Because all of these guys are not only like athletes but kind of actors in a sense too, because they're going out there, they're cutting promos, they're playing to the crowd. Like, it's a lot for them to do. And when you think about like, oh well, it can't be that hard. Watch episodes where they bring in like celebrities and like real athletes to have like special little spots, and watch how garbage they are because they think like, oh yeah, I can do this, and they walk in and then they suck. Like the only person that I would argue was any good was Stephen Amell, the actor that played Green Arrow on the CW show, because he's like a massive wrestling fan, And a few years ago, he actually had a match at SummerSlam. It was like a tag team match, and he didn't do half bad. And he took a lot of bumps too. Like he went into work. He got worked over pretty good by like some of the other wrestlers, because there was an era where like Monday Night Raw had new guest hosts every week, and it was always like celebrities and whatever. And that was probably the cringiest that professional wrestling has ever been,
Wow.
because you just got all these people who half of them clearly have no clue what's going on. Like they don't understand like what professional wrestling is or what the business is, and they go in and they just feel so out of place. Like Seth Green of all people had like a 6-man tag team match where his partners were John Cena and Triple H,
Remember
and he like punched Randy Orton in the face. Like it was the is the silliest thing that you will ever see. And it's silly moments like that that years later you can look back on and laugh and be like, yeah, that was really goofy, but that's professional wrestling. But in the moment you're watching it and you're like, so this is how the business dies with Seth Green. No disrespect to Seth Green. I love Robot Chicken, but he a professional wrestler, he is not. Yeah, there's a lot I could talk about professional wrestling nonstop. We could do a whole other podcast that's just me doing nothing but professional wrestling. But yeah, there was a lot to like about the Royal Rumble. Uh, not too many complaints, but overall it was a pretty good pay-per-view. I got to watch it with a friend of mine that I don't get to see very often, and me and him usually go nuts. We spend the whole weekend like speculating on how matches were gonna like turn out and stuff like that. So it's always I find that professional wrestling is better enjoyed with other people,
that.
because like you know it's easier to laugh about its goofiness when you're like sitting down with somebody else, and it's especially I'm having a blast that Josh is having a blast, because it's like he's just barely scratching the surface of what professional wrestling really is. And the deeper he gets into it, the happier that I'll be, because it's a wonderfully like dysfunctional world that is just a joy to watch sometimes. And I really love wrestling, and I
Not
will
to
defend it.
not to get into it too much, but my biggest takeaway from the Rumble is I'm just glad Goldberg didn't kill Drew McIntyre.
Yeah,
And
so
but just because of how Goldberg's last matches have went. But yeah, that's my biggest thing to take away from it.
oh yeah. So yeah, for any old school wrestling fans, Bill Goldberg, like the biggest draw in probably WCW history in recent years, has come back to the wrestling world. Probably because Vince McMahon's paying him more money than the three of us will ever see combined in our entire lives. And he's, you know, Bill Goldberg is in great shape for a man his age. Like
Yeah.
he looks almost identical to how he looked in his prime, with the exception of now he has like a gray goatee. Like that's it. That's the biggest change. And well, that's the biggest physical like appearance change. The second biggest change is the fact that he can only wrestle for 5 minutes. So so Goldberg has because he doesn't have the same kind of like ring work that he did back in his prime. A lot of his matches have been scary because he basically has two moves, and that's a spear, which is basically just a full on like football tackle, and a move called the jackhammer, which is where he picks the dude up, holds them straight up in the air, and then falls to the ground and twists them and like plants them square on their back. And even though he's still got like the physique of a man like 20 years younger than himself,
Mm-hmm.
he drops a lot of people.
Well, they haven't exactly given him the lightest of people
Yeah.
in his comeback matches to put in a jackhammer. Like,
Yeah, like he's fought Kevin Owens, which is a big boy. I love Kevin Owens. He's fought Brock Lesnar. He's fought The
Taker.
Undertaker. Like he fights all, and Drew
Yeah,
McIntyre.
he's not small by any means.
No, Drew McIntyre is a tall Scottish man like very tall. Like he is a
It's
good
like a taller Triple H, pretty much.
yeah, he's like 5 inches taller than Bill Goldberg, probably. Like he is significantly taller than Bill Goldberg. And Goldberg, that was the best jackhammer that Goldberg has done on somebody in a long time. And even then, he still kind of dropped him a little prematurely, and he landed more on his shoulders than he did his back. So like, so it's 1,000 wonders he didn't like separate his shoulder or anything like that. But what's funny about this match in particular was that it started off with Drew headbutting Goldberg. Like he just straight on head, like, you know, it looked like he really like cleaned his clock with that one. And then later in the match, Drew's finisher is basically like a falling kick to the head. Like he takes off sprinting and kind of like jumps and flattens his body out and just kind of like bicycle kicks like his opponent in the head, and he like full on kicked Goldberg in the head twice. Like you can tell when it's like a pulled shot and when it's like a real like what's called in the business like a shoot kick, which is basically like he actually kicked him. And it not to say he did it on purpose, but he still like shoot kicked him twice in the head. So we're talking about like 30 something. Like Drew McIntyre is a young man and in like the peak physical condition, and he just kicked like a 50-year-old man in the head twice. So it's ironic to some degree that I was more worried about Goldberg than the person Goldberg was fighting in this match, because I was like, he is taking a lot of shots. And there's this near the end of the match, or after the match is over, there's this shot of Goldberg's like walking back up the ramp, and he kind of like takes a knee and he looks really winded. And there's this real nice shot of like Goldberg, and you can see Drew McIntyre standing up on the turnbuckle in the background, holding up the championship belt. But like my friend was like, he might really be hurt. Like he's like, I'm kind of worried for Goldberg. He looks like he's like in genuine pain. And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's just a cinematic kind of like framing shot. But at the same time, he did just get like headbutted and kicked twice in the head. Like Goldberg might have a concussion, which is good because he's only like contracted to do 2 matches a year. So he can take the rest of the year to like take a break and recover from getting booted in the head twice. You know, that's kind of this is kind of the last little bit I'll say about it. But professional wrestling, with the WWE in particular, which, well, there's other companies that do it too, but they like in order to kind of bring back interest, they're bringing back these older guys like Bill Goldberg and like Brock Lesnar and like Sting. You know, they're bringing these guys back because casual viewers will watch more when they see these guys from their childhood. They're not as invested in the new crop of guys, but you know, a lot of people, whether they're still wrestling fans or not, can say like, oh yeah, I was a big fan of like Sting or the Dudley Boys or like any of these like pro wrestlers that kind of make appearances every now and then. But the problem with that is I wonder, you know, like when you reach a certain age, you should just probably say no. You know, like I know the money's probably really good and I know you have a love for the business, but like Undertaker wrestled for 30 years and that was like probably 10 years past what he should have. Because if you watch like his last like few WrestleManias, they're just kind of sad. Because it's like here's this guy who's trying to go, but he just can't keep up. And you know, it's you kind of hold him up on a pedestal because it's like here's a guy who is dedicated to his craft and he didn't break character for 30 years. And now that he's done, he's going around and doing like the interview circuit. And when he says things like, yeah, I just had to do one more match. I just had to do one more match. I had to do one more match. It's like, you know, like you have to know when to stop, you know, because your body can't like, no matter how many punches are pulled or the guy you're working with knows how to like, you know, sell and make like the shots you take look effortless. Like it doesn't matter. Like you're still getting dropped on your head or dropped on your back or like, you know, exuding a lot of energy. You know, we have to accept the fact that at a certain point, your Bill Goldbergs, your Stings, and your Undertakers just need to, you know, they need that moment of realization where they're like, I've had my time in the sun. I need to stop. or else I could like severely damage myself. Like I think Undertaker has like a fake, like maybe 2 fake hips, you know, from just the massive amount of like trauma his body has taken over the years. Sting was actually medically told not to wrestle anymore after he took a really bad bump to like the back of his neck, and now he's popping up in AEW, like, and they're saying he's going to have a match. And it's like he's over 50 too. It's like, why are all these old people still like, yeah, it's entertaining for like these casual people, but think about the health and well-being of these guys, you know? Like, yeah, Goldberg still looks like he's cut from diamond, but how many times you couldn't kick me in the head once. You know? So it's it gets these moments of like nostalgia to see these guys, but at the same time, it's like you got to pack it in at some point and realize that, you know, it's time for put it in the hands of the younger generation, because you've got great talent in the WWE and AEW and all of the wrestling promotions across the world. You know, you got these great talent guys that are in their like 20s and 30s, and they're like missing out on being the next big guy because, you know, the old timers just won't pack it in, you know. So maybe one of those kicks to the head will like set Goldberg straight, and he'll be like, I've made enough money. I can just like, you know, he came back because like his kid never saw him wrestle, and that's admirable. But it's like that was a few years ago. Like you can stop now if you want, and you probably should.
I thought after his last, run in the WWE, he was done. After that, like in-ring message that he gave, I thought he'd be done after that. But then, whenever he just keeps randomly popping back up. Like,
oh yeah, well, you know, Vince McMahon can cut some pretty big checks, you know, and he just made like $1 billion deal with NBC, selling the his entire like catalog of wrestling pay-per-views from like WWE, WCW, all of the like properties that Vince McMahon owns. He just sold the rights to all of that and like future pay-per-view rights to NBC and made like $1 billion. So he's going to be cutting massive checks to old guys for at least the next like 5 or 6 years without having to even like think twice about it.
Jeez.
Yep. All right, I think I've rattled the wrestling cage long enough tonight. So we're probably going to go ahead and call it quits there. Thanks for hanging in with us and, you know, being bounced around from topic to topic to topic. If you like it, let us know. If you want more episodes that kind of follow a consistent theme, let us know that too. Whatever you guys like, that's what we'll do, you know. So thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and tune in next time for more interesting conversation, probably about wrestling.
Definitely about wrestling.
Definitely about wrestling. All right. Bye, everybody.
Have a good one.
see you.